Hello again, it's Steve here with another episode of Astronomy Daily. It is the 18th of March, 2024.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast, with your host, Steve Dunkley.
And welcome again to Hallie, our digital pal who's fun to be with. How's everything in the ether these days, Hallie?
Shiny, good to be back.
And did you want to give us the menu for today?
Sure thing.
Okie dokie.
A bit of a recap and some new ones.
Go for it, Hallie.
Well, Crew-7 splashed down safely, as we know.
Yes, good job.
There's a massive solar eclipse due next month, and you're going to bring us that story later on.
Yes, I've got that one.
And Europa Clipper solar arrays are being tested.
So they are getting very close to final assembly there.
Sure looks like it. And NASA's Roman Telescopes has a new program that is looking at a revolutionary galactic plane survey that sounds amazing.
Wow, that sounds like a huge task in itself. Just imagine.
Tried it. Got distracted with other stuff.
Really? Like what?
Cataloging your old record collection for one.
You did what?
Did you know you have 2 copies of Under a Blood Red Sky by U2?
Yes, I did know that.
And 3 white albums by the Beatles.
Oh, well, there are actually special reasons for that, Hallie.
I think you're trying to set your own record, Steve.
No, it's because when one copy gets a scratch on it or gets damaged, then I just replace it with another copy. I think that was the real downside of having vinyl as a sort of a medium for music.
That's expensive.
Oh, well, of course everything's easier these days with digital. You know, I've replaced all of my collection with digital, so no more scratches.
Yeah, digital.
I'll bet as soon as it's possible, Hallie, you'll be begging me for a proper body to run around in.
Running is for the birds.
Totally.
Let's do the news.
Okie dokie.
The members of NASA's SpaceX Crew-7 mission, including NASA astronaut Jasmine Mobley, made preparations to close out their time on the International Space Station. The flight was the 7th crew rotation mission with SpaceX to station, and the 8th human spaceflight as part of NASA's Commercial Crew program. The international crew flew aboard the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft, named Endurance, which previously flew NASA's Crew-3 and Crew-5 missions. This was Mobley's first trip into space after being selected as a NASA astronaut in 2017. The New York native earned a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering with information technology at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and a Master of Science in aerospace engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. Mobley, a helicopter and Marine Corps test pilot, has more than 150 combat missions and 2,000 hours of flight time in over 25 different aircraft. She is also a graduate of the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School in Patuxent River, Maryland. As mission commander, she was responsible for all phases of flight, from launch to re-entry, and served as a flight engineer aboard the station. Mogensen was selected as an ESA astronaut in 2009 and became the first Danish citizen in space after launching aboard a Soyuz for a 10-day mission to the space station in 2015. As the pilot on Crew-7, he was responsible for spacecraft systems and performance. Aboard the station, he served as an Expedition 6970 flight engineer. Furukawa made his second trip to space this time, having spent 165 days aboard the space station as part of Expeditions 28 and 29 in 2011. Furukawa is from Kanagawa, Japan, and was selected as a JAXA astronaut in 1999. He is a physician and received his medical degree from the University of Tokyo, and later a doctorate in medical science from the same university. Furukawa served as a crew member on the 13th NEMO mission and later was appointed head of JAXA's Space Biomedical Research Group. Aboard the station, he became a flight engineer for Expedition 6970. This was Borisov's first trip to space, and he also served as a mission specialist, working to monitor the spacecraft during the dynamic launch and entry phases of flight. He entered the Roscosmos Cosmonaut Corps as a test cosmonaut candidate in 2018 and worked as a flight engineer for Expedition 6970. After undocking from the Orbital laboratory in their SpaceX Dragon spacecraft, the 4-person international crew safely splashed down the next day off the coast of Pensacola, Florida. Crew-7 spent 199 days in orbit. testing Europa Clipper's solar arrays. Technicians at NASA's Kennedy Space Center recently fully extended the first of two 5-panel solar arrays for the agency's Europa Clipper spacecraft. The 46.5-foot arrays also will be inspected and cleaned as part of assembly, test, and launch operations. Europa Clipper is being assembled at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California and is managed in partnership with Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory in Laurel, Maryland. The spacecraft will ship to Florida later this year for launch aboard a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket from Kennedy's Launch Complex 39A. NASA's Launch Services Program, based at Kennedy, is managing the launch service. Targeted for launch in October, moon Europa, which is believed to have a global ocean beneath its icy crust that has more water than all of Earth's oceans combined. NASA's Roman telescope is set to revolutionize our understanding of the Milky Way with a detailed survey, uncovering over 100 billion cosmic objects and providing new data on the galaxy's structure. NASA's Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope team has announced plans for an unprecedented survey of the plane of our Milky Way galaxy. It will peer deeper into this region than any other survey, mapping more of our galaxy's stars than all previous observations combined. There's a really broad range of science we can explore with this type of survey, from star formation and evolution to dust in between stars and the dynamics of the heart of the galaxy, said Catherine Zucker, an astrophysicist at the Center for Astrophysics Harvard and Smithsonian in Cambridge, Massachusetts, who co-authored a white paper describing some of the benefits of such an observing program. A galactic plane survey was the top-ranked submission following a 2021 call for Roman survey ideas. Now, the scientific community will work together to design the observational program ahead of Roman's launch by May 2027. There will be lots of trade-offs since scientists will have to choose between, for example, how much area to cover and how completely to map it in all the different possible filters, said paper co-author Robert Benjamin, an astronomer at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. While the details of the survey remain to be determined, scientists say if it covered about 1,000 square degrees, a region of sky as large as 5,000 full moons, it could reveal well over 100 billion cosmic objects, which would be mainly stars. Observatories with smaller views of space have provided exquisite images of other galaxies, revealing complex structures. But studying our own galaxy's anatomy is surprisingly difficult. The plane of the Milky Way covers such a large area on the sky that studying it in detail can take a very long time. Astronomers also must peer through thick dust that obscures distant starlight. While we've studied our solar system's neighborhood well, Zucker says, we have a very incomplete view of what the other half of that Milky Way looks like beyond the galactic center. Observatories like NASA's retired Spitzer Space Telescope have conducted large-area surveys of the galactic plane in longer wavelengths of light and revealed some star-forming regions on the far side of the galaxy. But it couldn't resolve fine details like Roman will do. Roman will offer new insights about the structure of the central region known as the bulge, the bar that stretches across it, and the spiral arms that extend from it. We'll basically rewrite the 3D picture of the far side of the galaxy, Zucker said. The Galactic Plane Survey is Roman's first announced general astrophysics survey. Astronomers from all over the world will have the opportunity to use Roman and propose cutting-edge research, enabling the astronomical community to utilize the full potential of Roman's capabilities to conduct extraordinary science.
Roger that, Control. We're listening to Astronomy Daily, the podcast.
And thank you again for joining us today on Astronomy Daily, the place for all your space science and astronomy news from around the globe and beyond. I just want to take a moment to remind you that you can receive the now famous Astronomy Daily newsletter in your email each day simply by visiting astronomydaily.io. Yes, we've made it simple with our own URL and putting your email in the slot provided. It's that easy. Our newsletter gathers all the news from the best sources around the world to keep you informed about the latest developments, happenings and breakthroughs in astronomy and science. And while you're there, you can check out all of our past episodes as well. And there's much more there as well. So I hope you'll join us.
Astronomy Daily with Steve and Hallie. Space, space science and astronomy.
So where were you on Thursday morning? I know where I was. I was watching the SpaceX Next Generation Mega Rocket, which launched on Thursday morning, headed into orbit on an important test flight, the purpose of which was to demonstrate new technologies and techniques that'll be crucial on the future missions to the moon and even beyond that. And this flight, which launched on the 22nd anniversary of the founding of SpaceX company itself, did you know that? This was the rocket's third and most obviously most ambitious test, according to SpaceX. The launch was closely monitored because the enormous booster known as Starship is expected to play an important part in NASA's Return to the Moon program. We've been talking about this on this show for ages. The rocket lifted off at 9:25 a.m. Eastern time from SpaceX's Starbase test site in Boca Chica, Texas. This time, SpaceX achieved two major milestones over previous Starship tests. The spacecraft successfully reached orbit this time, then re-entered Earth's atmosphere for the first time just over 40 minutes later. This is the furthest and farthest that Starship has ever flown, SpaceX officials said during their live broadcast of the event. However, data suggests that the spacecraft was lost during its return to Earth, that is, before it reached the splashdown in the Indian Ocean that SpaceX had hoped for. After Thursday's test flight concluded, the Federal Aviation Administration said it was investigating a mishap involving the Starship vehicle and the rocket's first stage booster known as Super Heavy. No public injuries or public property damage have been reported, the agency said in a statement. The FAA is overseeing the SpaceX-led mishap investigation to ensure the company complies with its FAA-approved mishap investigation plan and other regulatory requirements, the agency added. Now, the FAA will need to conclude its investigation and SpaceX will be required to take any corrective actions identified by the agency before Starship can fly again. Now, we've seen this process before following Starship flights, so that's not unusual. Despite the undesired ending, SpaceX called it a phenomenal day. The company adjusted the targeted liftoff time Thursday morning, but Starship's launch started smoothly, and about 3 minutes into the flight, the Super Heavy first stage booster successfully separated from the upper stage Starship spacecraft. However, Super Heavy did not accomplish what is called a final burn as it fell back to Earth, causing it to splash down hard in the Gulf of Mexico, SpaceX said during the webcast. SpaceX had also hoped to demonstrate several other processes and capabilities during the flight, including opening and closing the vehicle payload doors and transferring propellant between two of the Starship tanks in orbit. The company said that it will need to analyse post-flight data to determine if these objectives were in fact achieved. SpaceX also intended to fire one of the Starship's Raptor engines while in space, but opted to skip that portion of the process. Many of the techniques attempted during the Starship third flight would help SpaceX carry out future missions to deploy satellites, as well as set the stage for moon missions as part of NASA's Artemis program. The company also said that many of the objectives will help develop Starship into a fully reusable system. That is SpaceX's eventual plan, but it was not the intention for this test flight. Starship was selected by NASA to carry astronauts to the lunar surface in the upcoming Artemis 3 mission, which would launch in 2026. Starship's debut flight last April ended with the rocket exploding several minutes after liftoff. A second Starship launch in November achieved several milestones, including separation of the first stage booster and upper stage spacecraft, but the company lost contact with the vehicle shortly after. This third flight has proved to be vastly more successful in achieving a greater scope of planned objectives and appears to be a positive step forward for SpaceX, NASA, and Artemis as well. Now, I know what you're asking. You all want to know when the next solar eclipse is going to occur. Well, I can tell you, the next solar eclipse will be a total solar eclipse on April 8, 2024, and it's a big one. And it will be visible Now, you're going to have to really sit down for this one. It will be visible from Mexico across 14 US states and southeastern Canada. Now, just imagine that for a moment. That's quite a path across the globe of the world. Exactly 6 years, 7 months and 18 days, but who's counting, after the same type of solar eclipse crossed the US from Oregon through South Carolina on August 21, 2017, and this solar eclipse will be visible to millions of people. Yes, millions. A solar eclipse occurs when the moon is positioned between the Earth and the Sun and casts a shadow over the Earth. They can only occur during the phase of the new moon and make for an interesting sky-watching target. There are 4 types of solar eclipses depending on how the moon and the sun and the earth are aligned at the time of the event. A solar eclipse always occurs about 2 weeks before or after a lunar eclipse. 1. A total solar eclipse, and that is the sun is fully obscured by the moon. 2. Partial solar eclipses, where the moon doesn't fully block the sun, so only a portion of the sun is obscured, and here the moon appears to take a bite out of the sun. 3. Annular solar eclipses. The moon is centered in front of the sun but doesn't quite cover the entirety of the surface as seen in a total solar eclipse. A ring of fire shines around the moon. And 4. Hybrid solar eclipse, the rarest of solar eclipses, and is a combination of a total and annular eclipse, sometimes known as an AT eclipse, and is produced when the moon's shadow moves across the Earth. These begin as one type of eclipse and transitions to another. Now, according to the educational website Space Edge Academy, 28% of solar eclipses are total, 35% are partial, 32% are annular, and only 5% are hybrid. And a total solar eclipse will darken the skies over Mexico, the US and Canada on April 8, 2024. And that will be something to see. It comes just 6 months after the impressive annular solar eclipse, which swept across 8 states in the US Southwest, as well as Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, and Brazil. During the total solar eclipse, the moon will cover 100% of the sun's disk as viewed from the narrow path of totality that stretches from Sinaloa, Mexico through the US to Newfoundland, Canada. Those just outside the path will experience a partial solar eclipse where the moon appears to take a bite out of the sun. Now, if you missed this one, there is another chance to see another eclipse this year. The second solar eclipse of 2024 will be an annular ring of fire eclipse visible in South America. To see the best of this one, you must be located somewhere along the path of annularity, which cuts through Argentina and Chile on October the 2nd.
And that's all she wrote for another episode of Astronomy Daily.
That's right, Hallie. Once again, thanks for staying with us for another episode. I really hope you enjoyed the stories that we chose from the Astronomy Daily newsletter for you today. And don't forget, you can get the Astronomy Daily newsletter in your email each day just by going to astronomydaily.io and popping your email in the slot provided. It is terrific.
Sure is. It's why Steve always sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
Hey, that's not the only reason.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just guitars this and lasagna that.
Huh?
Folks, you should hear him on a bad day.
Okay. Say goodbye, Hallie.
See you later, everyone.
See you next time.
Astronomy Daily, the podcast, with your host, Steve Dunkley.
What's wrong with guitars and lasagna?
Oh, honestly.